Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we have a bit of a special video actually because we're going to be covering two movies. The interesting thing about these movies is that you can only watch them through purchase of a limited amount of physical copies. From what I understand, there's no way to watch them online. Both are by the same director, a man named Sam Hell, and I want to give a few warnings before we start this video. Both of these movies are rated X, so there is extremely explicit sexual content and violence in these films, and I'm not kidding about that. And if you're interested after this video in purchasing either of these films, you can go to abaroquehouse.com. This directly supports the director of these films and helps fund his future projects, and is definitely the way I recommend you go about watching them. Now, the reason we're covering both of these films is because they're relatively short. In total combined, they're about 50 minutes. And also, I wanted to give a huge thank you to the director, Sam Hell. I originally covered one of his films on my TikTok, one that we're going to be talking about today. He reached out to me, we exchanged a few messages, and he was nice enough to actually send me a few extra gifts with the second film that I ordered. So, again, thank you, Sam Hell. And again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, to get into the films, the first one we're going to be talking about is Love Dump. In this film, we follow a serial killer, cannibal, and necrophiliac, Denise Holmes. The entire film is narrated by a detective who is reading one of her notes and an audio tape that she left at one of her crime scenes. We see Denise rent a hotel room for what is going to be a horrific night for someone. I should also mention that Denise is transgender. We start out with a pretty explicit scene of Denise just masturbating. She then goes off and purchases a pig's head, takes it into the shower, wears a sort of BDSM mask, I guess, and proceeds to have sex with the pig's head. Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of these kind of films. She then phones a prostitute who meets her at her hotel. The encounter starts out pretty normal. The two exchange some sexual acts, but Denise then pulls a knife on her. The entire situation becomes immediately hostile and a lot more violent. Denise then rapes the prostitute, forces her to do some very explicit acts before Denise then commits some very violent acts on this poor woman. Some of the notable parts of this is she pulls out intestines from this woman's vagina and has sex with that. Also decapitates her, keeps her head, and has sex with that as well. The film ends with Denise leaving her note and we hear her audio tape. And that's it. She takes the severed head of the prostitute and leaves. A pretty graphic film by all means. Relatively short though, only about 35 minutes long. The next film is even shorter, but just as sadistic. And it's Sadistic Pleasures. In this film, we follow an unnamed woman as she's seemingly being filmed for pornography. We see her on a POV kind of shot, masturbating in front of a camera for a few minutes. However, after a few minutes, the person behind the camera seems to get a little more involved. He starts physically abusing the woman, starting out with choking her, putting his fingers in her mouth, and eventually hitting her. This only escalates further as he injects her with what I believe is heroin and starts cutting her all over her body. After he's done with that, he takes the knife and actually cuts off both of her breasts in a very, very graphic scene. I can't even tell if she's alive at this point, but he then cuts open her stomach and presumably kills her then. And that's it. At about 21 minutes, the film ends. The thing I really like about these films is that they're so boundary pushing for being such low budget films, but I mean, the special effects definitely don't seem all that low budget. They seem very, very real. These are only 2 films in a much, much larger catalog, again, on their website, abaroquehouse.com. If this kind of stuff, more short form, extremely violent and depraved films interest you, I definitely recommend these. So if you like these kind of films and want to support the artists making them, I definitely recommend purchasing these. These films are definitely interesting to talk about within the horror community, especially because of their novelty. You can only buy physical copies, and I think that's really great. I just want to thank Sam Hell again for sending me all the goodies with my most recent purchase and the handwritten note. Again, thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. And I hope you all go on and support these films if you want to. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. This was the most disturbing films ever made.